This week, we count down the greatest nations to ever grace the octagon or boxing ring. And kicking us off is Brazil, a country responsible for the pioneering family of mixed martial arts. Nearly 3 decades ago, the UFC revolutionized the world of combat sports, and the origins of that upheaval can be traced directly back to Brazil. Open martial arts style challenges have been common practice in Brazil since the 1920s through Vale Tudo, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu eventually taking over as the nation's national pastime. The Brazilians would bring their fighting flavor to America by way of the Gracie family and started the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It is no surprise that one of the Gracies, Royce, went on to win that first tournament.
I grew up in a family in Brazil. This happened back in Brazil. I mean, not in a big event like this, but we grew up on that in the fighting business. But what happens in Brazil, people don't know in the world. And without the TV, back in Brazil, it was just, okay, it's personal. You do your style, I do my style, let's see who's the best.
The depth of these MMA roots has led to an entire generation of Brazilian champions in the sport, including historical icons like Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, Shogun Rua, Lyoto Machida, Demian Maia, and Amanda Nunes, to name just a few. The legacy of BJJ and the UFC alone ensure that Brazil will go down in history as a true giant of fight sports. No one is sure who invented boxing, but there is no doubt that the historically violent nation of the United Kingdom is responsible for the modern sport we all know. Everything from 3-minute rounds and weight classes to the size of the ring can be traced back to the 12 rules originally laid down by John Chambers in the Marquis of Queensberry's rules in 1867. And the British Isles have been pumping out pugilistic champions ever since. From Jack Dempsey becoming middleweight champion in 1884 through to Tyson Fury today, UK fighters have consistently featured at the top of divisional lists for well over a century and accounted for the 3rd most lineal champions in history. And every time they did, the Americans employed the same rhetoric.
When you had the Revolutionary War, we beat them in 1776. And so England again, through fisticuffs, has declared war on the ilk of Frank Bruno against America, Mike Tyson. We will beat them again in 1996.
The British also came for MMA titles, though with more limited success. And it took the unlikely workhorse Michael Bisping to finally win the UK's first UFC title. There are many styles in boxing, but Mexican boxing is the scariest, because anyone who is facing a boxer described as having a Mexican style knows they are going to get hurt. As ESPN boxing broadcaster Bernardo Osuna describes it, he's willing to bleed to score a victory. He's willing to get up off the canvas to score a victory. The Mexican fighter is willing to go that far in order to come away with the victory. This is exactly how the first Mexican heavyweight champion in history, Andy Ruiz Jr., upset Anthony Joshua to claim the title.
Man, that was my first time in the canvas. And when I was in the canvas, I was like, whoa, what the hell just happened? But I had to get him back, you know? I had to get him back. I think that's when the Mexican blood in me and the Mexican warrior that I have, I had to return the favor.
And the biggest name in boxing today, Canelo Alvarez, who has over 50 wins with only 1 loss, titles in 3 divisions, and the biggest telecast deal in the history of the sport. And with the love Mexican fans show for their national warriors, it's hard to imagine Mexico's place in the world of combat shrinking anytime soon. Through both its Soviet years and in the decades afterwards, Russia has left an indelible mark on the world of hand-to-hand violence, both at an Olympic level and at the highest echelons of hurt. The Soviet Union as a whole still dominates the wrestling gold medal tally, despite not competing at the Olympics since 1988. Russia independently appears fourth, and the unified team that Russians competed as once in 1992 is 12th. Taken together, their medal tally is insurmountable. And the nation of Russia is responsible for the greatest heavyweight to ever enter the sport of MMA, Fedor Emelianenko, a fighter with superhuman speed and strength. And who can forget the Russian mauling machine Khabib Nurmagomedov, who has brought his country's wrestling excellence to the UFC with terrifying success. The Eagle has had unprecedented success at the highest level of mixed martial arts, and his attitude to the game could hold the secret to the wider success of Russian combat.
I'm come here for smash this guy.
It should be obvious who the greatest fighting nation is. As we've seen, other countries may have developed ways of fighting and produced a few champions. But the place all of those champions go to compete, the United States of America, either to the home of the UFC and boxing pay-per-view Las Vegas.
I made a promise to myself when I was young that I wouldn't go to Vegas unless I fought there. And 30 years later, I'm finally getting the opportunity to fight there on the biggest platform in the world.
Or the Mecca of boxing, New York City's Madison Square Garden.
Of course, I want to say thank you, Madison family, because I feel this is my second home. You know, I had a lot of fights, huge time, just amazing time, amazing atmosphere in Garden. I love it.
The most champions in both boxing and MMA are American as well. In the UFC, the USA has had 68 champions. The second best is Brazil with 15. That's less than a quarter. Boxing is even crazier, with 211 individual lineal champions to second best Mexico's 34. When it comes to countries that have both succeeded in and shaped fighting, nowhere else comes close to our number one, the United States of America. An absolute classic from the EFC cage in South Africa, next.
Thanks for watching. And remember, if you want more fight sports in your life, just hit the subscribe button.